Sitting here. Anyway, welcome. Welcome this morning to MethodsNET conference, and it is the first session of the whole conference, so welcome to overall event of MethodsNET. My name is Anka Kekez, and today, together with colleagues Ana Petek and Krešimir Petković, we will be presenting you method, or the way we use the method of qualitative content analysis. The idea of the overall conference, as you will see today, is not just to share ideas on the papers we are currently working on, which is the afternoon part of the conference, but in the morning we kind of decided, I'm actually saying this we because I'm also a MethodsNET executive board member who was designing this whole event, and I will be really happy to hear your feedback throughout the days ahead of us. An idea was that these primers serve as some kind of opportunity for all of us to open up the black boxes of what happens. Join, welcome. To open up the black boxes on what we are actually doing when we are applying different methods. In our case, of data analysis. And this is what three of us want to share with us, our journey, which now lasts for several years, and the team is bigger, you will see very soon, in which we are adapting and applying and then modifying it, the qualitative content analysis in the case of Croatian public policies. I'm going to be more specific right away. What we designed is the interactive, I would say, interactive conversations in which three of us deliver each part of the research process, and then we open up discussion. But nevertheless, if you do gonna have any questions in the meantime, just raise a hand or even start talking.
No, they have to take.
Yes. Hello, camera. So we need to actually make sure that we do record everything for the purposes of further teaching and making sure that what we were talking about here can actually even be disseminated and shared in a case somebody want to learn about the method that we talk about. So let's get into the content. Qualitative content analysis is a method that 8 of us, because the project and the team is right here, is consisting of 8 really cool scholars from University of Zagreb, and also accompanying or partnering institutions to University of Zagreb, Institute for Social Sciences, and also another Bernays University. There's 8 of us. We call ourselves a handball team, because in handball they have 8 players. And we needed a big team to actually tackle what we wanted to tackle, and our idea was to deal with policy goals. I don't know how many of you are into public policy field or are in a way connected with it, public policy research. So there are some, cozy. So okay. So in public policy discipline, we have many directions and subfields and topics to discover, and those which some of them are really well developed in the sense of the concepts, some are more vague, and something that we wanted to tackle is one of those vague concepts, ambiguous concepts, such as policy goals. No matter if either of us is in a public policy sphere, public policy goals is something that affects our lives on a daily basis, although we don't know that. Policy goals in the sense of statements and the desire of government to actually engage in action. So what was our idea? To engage into joint research by connecting our knowledge and connect our diverse methodological and empirical backgrounds, because the team consists on really different and diverse scholars. As you will even see, 3 of us are really different in the sense of how we approach data analysis. And what we designed a research project that will at the same time allow us to tackle policy goals. And I will very soon tell you what was actual research project and research goal. But now I'm just going to say how we actually decided to build a process of tackling policy goals. So by having a team of 8, we kind of decided that we want to do it for a longer time. And with qualitative content analysis as a method that requires quite immense data coding, and if you're going to do something in team, it's better to make a team that will sustain over time, so you can actually use the data for different purposes or different papers, or you can even survive the coding process, which usually lasts quite some time, or not just the coding, but actually the moment until you reach coding, you already have some journey ahead of you. So we decided that to engage in building a team, and ensuring a small grant that will allow us actually to have basic resources, and even more so, something that became really important element to make sure that we even have a time for teamwork, and perhaps even to make sure that that teamwork is connected with some kind of enjoyment and friendship building, and I would say situation in which we could actually create a real team. So each year, and it's now going on for several years, we meet for 3 days. Anna is the coordinator of the meeting, and she's scheduling what we do, including the lunches and the walking and whatever we have in our plan. So we go outside of Zagreb, this is where we live, and we spend 3 days in discussing a stage in which we are at that moment in our project, making sure that we maintain our team and our community. And that was really important ingredient of our joint work. And I'm even saying this before, because it's really important when we do engage in any kind of long-term, I would say, analytical activity with the team, it's important to think about the process and the teamwork and the fact that it's important that we know each other and that we are able to put more into the work when it needs to be done, or to actually put a priority on what it is that we are doing at the moment by feeling the group energy together. So it was an important ingredient in a sense of making the project working. In a sense of the process. Now, let's go to content. And content is something that allows us, after several years, I think we are now in a 4th year, if I'm good. 5th year, oh my time flies, definitely. 5th year of joint work. What we were able to do to publish pieces, not just in domestic, but also international journals on public policy. One is underway, one is in European policy analysis, even got the Best Paper Award prize for that year. And the other one, rather recent, is in policy sciences. So journals that do require methodological strength when talking. And the references that we were using is Qualitative Content Analysis by Margaret Schreier as our, I would say, framework for the data analysis work that we did. So pretty much this is the outcome of our work. Process was what I just said. The outcome were, among other things, published papers and more to come. And there are several of them in more domestic or regional journals. And what it is that we actually were doing. So I would say in the next, definitely, I might say 7 to 8 minutes, I'm going to be talking about first part of the research process, while Anna and Krešo will continue then, to kind of open up the steps and show you how the work in a team with these outcomes at hand was looking like. So idea was that we try to do cross-sectoral comparison of policy goals, which doesn't have to relate to you by any means in a sense of the topic, but idea was not just to describe policy goals as something that we want to describe, because theory in public policy is not offering not so much when we do talk about policy goals, but also to be able to do it in a comparative way. And you will see how we actually did it. So why we tackled policy goals? Because literature in public policy is only giving, we would say very often statements or the definitions which say that there are statements that declare what the government wants to do, what are the priorities, what are the formal expectations or formal, I would say, desires that we can call upon when we want to advocate change or to see what happened. But then when we talk about the content of policy goals, we only know that they can be abstract and they can be less abstract or they can be specific, but we don't know much outside of that empirically. Theoretically, a little bit more, but empirically proven not so much. So what we wanted to figure out and to see is how the content of policy goal looks like. Because they say that policy goals, in a sense of like, in higher education, the goal is to have a high mobility, to have excellence in, I don't know, social science, to have great rigor in methods. But then, can we actually have the definition of policy goals in a sense of the content that they can have, in a sense of what they are about, usually, and in a sense of also themes they are tackling, and also in a sense of technical dimensions they are having in themselves, such as, are they operational, are they not, do they have timeline, do they have indicator? So we wanted to see what they are about and how are they look like, how are they structured. So that was our research question. And in that we wanted to develop empirical theory by building the idea of goal definition from the ground in a way. And for that, we needed very, very structured analytical process, because that was the only way for us to even present the idea of huge ambition of defining policy goals. And now we go to method, and why qualitative content analysis as a method. So qualitative content analysis is a research or coding method which allows very, very intensive and encompassing coding of big amount of data. Just before me continuing, have you ever in the group, did you had any tries with the qualitative content analysis? So actually I don't need to explain too much of it. And the thing with it is that it is a method that has the power or the ability or is enabling us to code big amount of data with the idea of very structured classification of what data gives. And it's used to answer descriptive research questions. So the key thing that we can do with qualitative content analysis is actually answer descriptive research questions. We cannot answer causal type of questions. We cannot explain things. What we can do is answer what it is something, what it's made of, what are the types, what are the subtypes, what are the characteristics, but we cannot go further than that with this method. You will see why, because of some rules that the coding actually involves here. And due to that, it's really good for the research questions in which you are trying to describe something new. And to do that, you have to deal with a big amount of data, qualitative data, because it's very structured and it allows original classification while being very rigid I would say while making sure that you have good quality standards. Because when we are trying to propose classifications in any field, social science, medical science, it's important because we are suggesting something new. We are trying to say these are policy goals. This is what they are made of. These are topics they involve. We actually have to be able to say we're saying this because we do have systematic analysis behind us that is actually following so many standards of good quality, and due to that, I'm allowing myself to say or to propose this definition of this concept or this phenomena. So the thing is that is systematic, it is consistent, there are really clear steps involved, which we're going to be opening up very soon, but at the same time, it's flexible in the sense it can be portable to different research settings. It doesn't have to be about policy, it might be as well about sport, about anything that actually matters. But a really important thing is it's only for description. And very often, because we do all teach methods, I also do it in summer school that MethodsNET are organizing. When students do come to a method school, usually I present different qualitative coding methods, and this one is one of them. And it is the one that should not be confused with methods that are allowing us to do interpretation, meaning search, or methods that are allowing us to seek for explanations. We don't answer the question how, we don't answer the question why. It allows us to answer the question what, but it does it really well. And after that, we can continue with other methods or nest star analysis or do the mixed methods later on. So it requires a sequence of events. Anna have the clock or watch, so make sure that I don't go over much. Okay, I'm already in almost 10 minutes, so I'm gonna do 5 more minutes to make sure that we have enough time to show you. And before I continue, just to make sure, is it the rhythm I'm using is good enough? Okay. Oh. Requirements. This is why it's a very specific method. Those are 3, I would say, key notions or key characteristics of the qualitative content analysis that are making it strong and yet having some limitations aligned with that. So when we know that we are doing or when we are about to do qualitative content analysis, we're gonna be making sure that our coding frame or list of codes that we're gonna come up with has these 3 characteristics: unidimensionality, mutual exclusiveness, and exclusiveness in a sense of unidimensionality means that we're going to end up with, in our case, definition of policy goals and topics, which can be this topic, third and fourth topic. And then with that topic, we can have subtopics. Under topic 1, we have 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 3. Which is really important is that each of these subtopics actually covers just one meaning. It doesn't or shouldn't covers several meanings in it. Meanings should be clear, and they should be clearly defined and have good boundaries in between. So it should really be focused on one meaning, not combination of meanings, which usually, for example, in thematic analysis or in frame analysis, it's something which is actually not the case. Meanings can be combined in one code. Here, one code is one meaning. It means one thing. You will see later in the example. Now, the mutual exclusiveness. This one is the destroyer. So, did anyone try to follow this rule? Mutual exclusiveness. I will tell you what it is about. So, we have phenomena that we are trying to describe. So, we have codes, which we call categories. Those are big codes, and I'm going to show you how they look like. And then each category, let's say that one phenomena has 5 characteristics. It's broad, it's whatever. And then within one characteristics, it's going to have sub-characteristics, which is important is that when we code data, we can only code a segment of data once into one subcode in one category. Let me just actually visually show you this, because it's always better when it's possible to actually see what I'm talking about in a sense of visual. So this is our coding scheme. We don't need to get into any content here. So we have 5 categories, 5 themes that goals can have, and each of those themes has sub-themes. So when we were coding, after developing coding scheme, the rule of mutual exclusiveness was that one coding unit could only fit in one of subcategories of thematic field 1. It couldn't be 1.8 and 1.9. It has to be just 1.8 or 1.9, and it can be coded in different categories, but only once. And this is something which makes qualitative content analysis very distinctive than other coding techniques, such as, for example, thematic analysis, which is allowing multiple coding of one coding unit. And this one is important for this method because it is a descriptive method that is trying to make, I'm going to use the word, as clean as possible definition, with not much fluctuation between the meanings. Due to that, it's really hard later on to find relations between the things, and this is the limit of the method. Because of this rule, you cannot later on look how many times one sentence was coded in different, because you were just not coding it many times. So you cannot later on look for the co-occurrence of those things. So that's the mutual exclusiveness. And then exhaustiveness, in a sense, we really want to capture all relevant aspects in the data empirically. So by looking at all these 3 really important rules, we did steps of sampling, segmentation, code development, codebook, coding rules, text coding, final coding, and so not to fall asleep, I'm going to start right away, because this meta language is always making things sometimes to sound even harder they are, although some of them are not so easy to run through. So I'm going to dive into them right away. Sampling, that's first step in qualitative content analysis, in a sense that we have, because we are about to describe phenomena, we need to sample instances of the phenomena which should be representative as much as possible, and which should allow us to have exhaustiveness, in a sense that we actually do capture whatever empiric is giving us. In our case, the sample was 925 pages of different policy documents, 11 policy strategies that we decided to use as a data source, which we decided that are good for representation of what we think about when we talk about policy goals. In a sense, we were looking for the goals in strategies that were actually stating those goals, literally. And we were selecting them by trying to make variety in who is making them, which type of document, is it strategy, is it plan, is it... and important was that we decided to choose really strategical plans that contain are focused on policy goals, and time span was 10 years, from 2010 to 2020, and content was actually sample of policies. And the sample were different strategies. They were diverse by activity, which were differing or varying, yes, by activity, target group, and the issue. We had those 3 types of policy goals. There is some policy theory behind this choice. I won't bother you with it too much, but we tried to achieve some representativeness of our sample. So we are asking how the goals look like. So let's look at the strategies which represent the population of strategies in Croatia, which is the country which we know the language, so we're going to be able to code actually the documents. We're going to try to pick up as much as possible diverse types of strategies so we can actually get all these possible ways for goals to be defined. And then, after selecting those strategies, we had to do data segmentation. That's the second step in content analysis. And what you are saying is that I have... Okay, so I'm going to really fasten up now. So segmentation was the hard part. In a sense, we have to pull out data units that we need to actually code. And here the problem was to choose criteria, what to pull out. And we decided to go with the thematic criterion in a sense of choosing statements that are actually talking about government trying to achieve something implicitly and explicitly, to be very honest. Really important here, and you will embark to this issue, is because of those three rules, exhaustiveness, exclusiveness, and one meaning, it's not easy to say when actually data unit stops and starts. Because in one sentence, you can actually have several goals. And what if they are mutually belonging to similar category or within one category? So we started with the data unit of one sentence, but ended up with the data unit of few words. We were cutting them so we can actually follow up those rules. And segmentation actually took place in two stages: before we developed codes and the coding scheme, and after, when we knew actually what are the things that had to be not together anymore. And we're doing that. Out of 900 documents, we pulled out 2,223. Now you know why we need 8 people and why we had joint weekends, pretty much. This is to survive through all this together. And we were developing codes by looking at the two things, which is now more policy contact kind of topic, but it was important just to say that we are looking at the two things, teams and technical elements of the goals. But really important was that we were in first segment using very inductive path, because there is no theory about teams of policy goals. So it was very inductive search for codes. And in a second segment, we were actually mixing a little bit theory with the empirics in a sense of using theory-driven and data-driven codes to develop a coding scheme. And the coding scheme that we actually developed before even starting to code. So this is what I'm saying. We are actually developing coding scheme before we do overall coding, and we do it on a certain percentage or certain share of the overall data that we segmented. So out of 2,000, on the whole set at the end, yeah. On all 2,000 we tried.
Yes, we extracted inductive codes from... We extracted the inductive codes from all 2,000 units. That's why it took us several years, just that you know.
Yeah, because Anna was the leader of the process, making sure that we don't miss any step. So what we did is making sure that all 2,000, but it didn't seem like 2,000 anyway, because it did last like months. It felt like it's never going to end. The issue is it was not easy to reach this point, to actually propose a coding scheme which you think will be covering every element of the data. And then only then we are about to do real coding for the actually testing and everything. But before that, you do a lot of coding to reach the point in which you're going to have coding scheme. This is the coding scheme for the first part of the question of the team, with the 5 categories and up to 9 subcategories in it. And then we went even further and we developed coding scheme on technical dimension, which is the second dimension that we want to capture, that actually also adds in 5 more categories. And as you say, it was a long, long process in which there was a lot of coding deliberations and conversations for us to reach the moment in which we could say, okay, we are happy with it, now let's code the data by using it and only it, without changing it anymore. And now Anna will say how that process looked like.
But that's not the end. So thank you, Anka, for the great introduction. So when we developed the codes, we had to prepare the code book that is really, really detailed because content analysis asks for that, and because we have 8 coders. To be uniform, you have to have a lot of rules. So we have detailed 17 and 9 pages for both dimensions detailed code book. It has a lot of coding rules in it, and each code is separately described. It has a definition. It has a lot of examples, and most importantly, it has inclusion and exclusion criteria. So explanations, if you see the data, put here and do not put in some other code. So for the rules, Anka already explained the main rule. So one coding unit could fit only into subcodes of one main code or one category. That meant for us, for the thematic dimension, that one coding unit could be coded once or up to 5 times, because there are 5 main categories: sectoral, evaluation, process, and so on goes. Technical dimension was different. We had main categories, and we had to simplify the theory. The theory could not fit our data. This is also the data-driven strategy of creating codes. So we simplified the theory, and each code was indicator is or not present, beneficiary is or not present. So in this case, one coding unit could fit every code, and it's logical. You cannot say it is and is not present, so only one of the two. We coded on subcategory level. It's not mandatory, but it fits our coding scheme. So if you put it in accessibility, then it's a sectoral goal. If you put it in efficiency, then it's an evaluation goal. So it automatically belongs to the main category. But those coding rules were not enough for us. Most important was the additional rules. We were practicing coding, and then we had a lot of overlaps, and then we, through a really long process, had to add additional rules in detail, explaining when you see this topic coded in A, not in B, but when you see the other topic coded in B and not in A. So the code book is this is why the code book is so long. Then we had additional rules that if you have a dilemma about the meaning and the coding of a coding unit, you need to focus on the central meaning of the coding unit, and there's not too much interpretation of it. So you are looking at the meaning that is explicitly, directly expressed in the coding unit. Kresho is interpretativist. He was not happy with that, but we were not looking what is behind the words. We were just looking at the words. So this is also the feature of qualitative content analysis. In this stage, we did some additional segmentation that Anka mentioned. If you could really code into 2 subcategories or 1 category, then you had to cut the coding unit into 2. So that was the second step of segmentation. For the technical dimension, we added contextual coding. We kept the coding units the same for the 2 dimensions. It was really important so that we can look the dimensions together in the end. The softwares also asked for that. But sometimes the coding unit was so short. For example, solidarity or human rights, this is the goal. And then in the surrounding text of that coding unit, there was some additional technical elements. For example, there was a table, and in the end of the table, there was an indicator that directly refers to the coding unit. And we said, okay, then we will code it. There is an indicator. So that's contextual coding. For each coding unit, we were looking at a paragraph before or after the unit, and if something was directly connected to the coding unit, on the same level, we coded as it was present in the text, or that it is determined by the coding unit. So just 2 pictures. This is example of the codebook from thematic dimension. I selected the shortest code just to fit the slide for nothing else. So there's a title, there's a short explanation of the code, not so many rules for national identity. It was not so present in the data. That's why. And some examples. Examples are in Croatian because we were working with Croatian data, but on English, so we combined the languages. Most of you know the style because you work the same. This is the example from technical dimension. So it's the code mode. It has first the definition, then it has a detailed description because we find 3 types of modes in the data, and we prescribed all 3 should be included in this code. Then we have a special coding rule for this code, when to apply it and when not to apply it. And then so many examples for mode is determined and the mode is not determined. Just one short example. This is quite easy to recognize in the data. And then testing. There are so many discussions about testing and percentages of agreement in testing in qualitative analysis. Some are strictly against it, telling that positivists are making us to do so. We do so because reviewers quite often ask for that, so we calculate the percentage. But what is really important about the pilot phase is really to test your coding scheme. That's why I love test coding. I don't care too much about the percentage. I need to try my coding scheme, how it works before we go to the final coding. We use 2 types of testing because the coding scheme and the rules are different for 2 dimensions. For the thematic dimensions, we use classical intercoding reliability. So 8 of us, we divided into 4 pairs. We took 10% of our data from all the documents to be as diverse as possible. And the coders in 4 pairs got their coding units double blind, each of them coded but he thinks or she thinks it is, and then we compared it. And in the first round, we got 64% of coefficients of agreement, and we were not satisfied because the reviewers are going to say it's not enough. So we decided to upgrade a bit. We did not change the coding scheme. It was working. What we really realized is that we miss a lot of additional rules. So we find overlaps that we have to tackle to deal with. And then we add rules. If you see some example, some small topic, you always have to code it in A, not in B. This is where our coders were different and where disagreement appeared. And when we added the additional coding rules in the second round, we used subsample a bit bigger, 15%. We changed the coding pairs, and we ended up with 79% of agreement. We decided it's enough. It should be 80, but there are 8 of us, so many subcodes in this coding scheme, and we decided that it's satisfactory, and we managed to publish, so it is. For the technical dimension, we could not use intercoding reliability because of the contextual coding. That would mean that each coder should read all 11 documents, and we have our specialties. This was the criteria to pick some of the policies, that the coder that knows the sector codes the strategy. So we use the coder consistency. So it's measuring uniformity of coding across time. So we again took 10% of our data, of our coding units, and each coder coded his or her document twice in a span of 2 weeks to see if you use the coding scheme equally across time to get this kind of uniformity. And we got 93% of agreement. And the reason is the coding scheme is much more simple. It's present, it's not, it's present, it's not. So it's less developed coding scheme. It's easier to get high agreement. And then we had to code. And that's the main job, and it's the most simple task methodologically. If you prepare everything really well, and if you lose a year or 2 on preparation, then the coding scheme is not going to, application of the coding scheme is not going to be so complicated. You need discipline, and you need to use it in a deductive manner. So we inductively developed it, and then we went back to all 2,000 units and deductively applied the whole coding scheme. And before I finish, I want to say something about the analysis and how to illustrate your QCA data. There's a lot of disrespect for descriptive research, so it's somehow less valuable, but I think it's fundamental and it's really hard work. And with QCA, you need to be aware that the coding scheme is really a main finding. We were asking what are dimensions of the goals, and coding scheme are the answers to that question. But you still can do something after the final coding. Otherwise, you should not have done it at all. So you can do a continuous text explaining by categories or by cases, by policies, the meaning of the codes. I hate when it's done with a lot of quotations. It's so really boring to read. We use some frequencies, so we show the percentages of appearance of our codes, but we do not do any statistical analysis of it. This is just to rank a bit the codes to first rough scan of the data. And we use a lot textual matrices. We create types and typologies, and we did find some co-occurrence and some patterns in the data, and this is what I want to show you. So this is simple table, quantitative elaboration on the data, what is present, what is not. You just can see Croatia and policies that in their goals that not usually include a lot of indicators, for example. This is the most, for me, the best, the most beautiful way to show the meanings in your codes without extremely big text. So use the textual data. The table is in Croatian, but because the article is in Croatian, but you can see the logic. The rows are the codes, the columns are the policies, and then you take each code and then you shorten in several points the meanings within that code. This is coding on procedure really within the codes. So this is really nice way to summarize what are the meanings there. This is co-occurrence. You cannot find it within the category, but you can find it among the categories. Those the coding rules allow. So you can see that process, sector, and evaluation-oriented goals overlap the most. So we did not have codes that were 5 times coded, but we did have some codes that were 2 or 3 times coded. We did have some co-occurrence. This is a main finding of our project. My students really laugh, but I said we coded for 2 years, and they say, and you ended up with 1 line, so. So this is not really a motivation for a methodological course. Policy theory says there are broad and structured, really operational goals. What we found, there's so much in between that theory does not talk about. And we were looking for co-occurrences among the technical aspects. There is a actor, there is beneficiary, there's not indicator, there's not time span. You could have so many combinations, but we were looking for those that are really present in our data. And then we developed 7 technical types of goals, and we said this is really a continuum. So from less features to more features. Those who have nothing, those who have all, as something in between, okay? So that's our perfect line that it took us 2 years or 3 years to come to. And the last example of the findings is intersection between the 2 dimensions. This is why we wanted to have similar coding units for both rounds. And when you combine the 2 dimensions, so you get to see what themes appear in what shapes of goals, or what content has what form. So this is some kind of spider web, and if we would like to, if we apply it to other countries, we expect to have a different snapshot, same categories, but different shapes for other countries, how their policy goals look like. And the time is really the enemy. I will finish with validity, and then I will leave the microphone to Kreša. Validity is so important in qualitative methodology. The most important mechanism for our project to get validity was endless meetings. Anka already mentioned that. So we were really slow, but we eventually get there, and it was discussing everything in every single step. Internal validity was partially acquired through the diverse expertise of the team. So we really are focused in our research on different policy areas. And then we coded, we took examples from different policies. Everybody had a homework to code, and then we would meet and discuss what this means to you. How do you understand the coding unit? Or how do you understand the code? Then you realize mobility and education and transport are similar but not the same. Or education and defense have national identity as a goal, but it's not completely the same. So this was how we tried to achieve internal validity. For the external validity or transferability, we are in a process of trying to apply our coding scheme to a set of international documents to see could we export our coding scheme. My intuition is that main categories will work. Subcategories could be a bit modified for different countries, maybe something added or something removed. But the main source of our external ability is really this cross-sectoral comparison. Policy theory says two health sectors in two countries are more alike than health and defense in one country. And we really had a really diverse sample to pick goals from all different angles. So this is it. For the final set, Kresha will talk about critique, because this is a nice instrument with many faults as every. Kresha, it's your turn.
And we have 10 more minutes. And we're gonna, if that's okay, perhaps 10:05, because I feel that everything will be lagging a little bit. Yes, okay. So you have your time.
Okay, thank you. I'm one of those small grants doing the coding, but I also tended to reflect more broadly about the process when we did that. And I understood here that everybody is labeling me interpretivist. And
you label yourself now?
I guess the tribal divide is strong here. Basically, what I do, my field of research is penal policy, or if you want, criminal justice policy making, and I do it as a broadly methodologically as a sort of Foucauldian genealogy, and in terms of more precise methods to approach the material, it's discourse analysis. And by the way, Michel Foucault was present at this university, and he gave an excellent interview to André Bertin about governmentality and genealogy. It's a really, really nice connection of those two concepts. So I have only 2 slides. One is called internal critique, and the other is called external critique. Basically, internal critique means, well, you accept the postulates, you accept the tenets of the analysis, and you are more friendly. And external critique means you're less friendly, and you undermine the very tenets of the analysis. So to go briefly through this, our articles begin with literature review, and you have so much literature on policy goals and aims and values, and everybody's sort of, telling his or her own story about that. So my doubt was, are we just, making this more fuzzy and more complex, and is this necessary that we're doing? But I sort of comforted myself, okay, we are trying to connect this to the empirical material with some sort of, empirically applicable scheme, so I could live with that internal critique. The second critique is about category building. Well, I would call that mystery of the coding scheme. I have a memory from this long-term process of me being this little grunt doing the coding. And okay, I'm thinking, is this fitting into this or that category? But how have we arrived to this category scheme? My clear memory is that at one moment Anna presented the scheme, and then okay, here's the thing we are working with, but it's not the whole truth. Basically, we are testing how does it fit to the material. So maybe we should solve this category, maybe we should change this or that. So there is this, when you're in the process, this deductive Popperian moment, like this is the scheme, does it fit or not? But basically you build that scheme in the beginning bottom up, so it goes both ways until you find something coherent within this cultural field you're dealing with. Okay, intercoder reliability. Oh wow. Well, I remember that we had so many sessions that were really puzzling to me. Like sort of, as you're a bit stoned, or there is some element of, you know, hallucinogenic experience or something psychedelic there. Like when I took this chalk here, you know, that example from Wittgenstein, you know, the duck rabbit. Is this duck or a rabbit? You know, it depends which frame you're using. But the point is that through these discussions, I started to understand other people. How come that they are understanding those seemingly same words in a totally different manner? And it sometimes resulted with me altering my frame. And finally, we arrived to something as, you know, shared meaning. So if you want, there is lots of interpretive stuff in this, you know, very, very like strict process that the boss described before. Okay, and this international validity, okay, when we presented this to other people and we tried this in journals, okay, but this is just a story about Croatia. How does it look in Hungary, in Japan, wherever? So I'm referring to this one of these like large-sounding terms, methodological nationalism. This was developed by late sociologist, German sociologist Ulrich Beck. He was critiquing a French sociologist, Pierre Bourdieu. Like, okay, you have these stories about differences in France, in cultural capital, class differences, but from the world point of view, this is all bourgeois stuff. Like these differences are so small. So we should like broaden this scheme and see how does it work in other countries. So this is internal critique. And now, you know, the more nasty stuff. Okay. You know the famous study by Aaron Wildavsky about implementation. Okay, they devise these policies in Washington. And how does it look in Oakland? Is it implemented like that? So when somebody sees our work, well, you're reading the stupidest documents of all governmental strategies. Does it transfer to real life? And my reply is, okay, but still this most basic definition of public policy by Thomas Dye is something that government chooses to do or not to do. So we still live in organized states, and when government says something, it tends to be important, at least at this level of symbolic politics. These are some categories infused by meaning that, you know, have some importance in our public life. Okay, and now this question of norms or values, if you want, I could have put the name of Leo Strauss there. You know, he was critiquing behavioral political science, like, well, you are fiddling while the Rome burns and you don't know that you're fiddling. So it's the questions of these values, are these our values? And my reference here is to Harold Lasswell, already in, I don't know, in the early 70s, preview of policy sciences and before. He has this strong emphasis on being clear about your own values. Like you have to think which are your values and goals. He has some, you know, sort of idiosyncratic list he developed of like there is power, wealth, I don't know. He has a list. And so the point is, if we are doing this in completely different regime, to use an extreme example like of historical totalitarian regime, let's say that you're doing this kind of analysis in a Nazi regime or Soviet regime, then you could do it basically, but maybe it's not something that you agree with. And here I'm being really pretentious. There is another reference to sociologist of late modernity, Anthony Giddens, double hermeneutics. It means that we are building on some concepts that are part of a society, and we are devising something else, and maybe it will return to society, and people are going to use it in some way. Maybe some, I don't know, state bureaucrats will think about our scheme of goals and, you know, adjust something according to that. And the other reference is even more pretentious. It goes to German classical idealism, to Hegel. This idea that soul morality is empty, so you have to put it in some sort of societal context. He calls it, it's obyčajnost in Croatian, Sittlichkeit in German. So there are some conceptual ways to associate this with broader community of values. And this one is the killer for me, the reference to John Searle, to his doctoral dissertation, I think, that was written with Austin, Speech Acts. it's also a critique of behavioralism. He says, think of behavioral scientists watching a simple football game. They don't know the concept, and they would develop their own concepts, like, oh, look at these people, coming together, running into each other, and they will say something, let's say, about a law of mutual interpenetration or something like that. And his point is, they don't understand the game from inside. And what they are doing is, they are just, playing some sort of positivist game that does not understand the culture. So he has another excellent example. Imagine of a person that counts certain words in Chinese, and he knows the frequency of those words, but he doesn't speak the language, he doesn't understand the language. So what we are doing here, we are saying, okay, these are these categories we developed, and then we were counting how many of these goals, how many of other goals, but what's the meaning of that? So my attempt of an answer to that kind of critique, okay, maybe in terms of psychological pathology, when something repeats all and over again, maybe it's telling something, but here we are in the field of politics, so maybe the frequency of goals can tell us something in this second step. So it's an interesting theme to think. And my last reference, and I'm finishing with that, is to this older book by John Dryzek about discursive democracy. And he has a point there. Every time when you say, he says, you develop some sort of questionnaire and think of people, you hear me as a, some sort of composite of attributes that you're measuring, then you're resulting a person as a political subject. We should, as analysts, be more radically democratic, talk with each other, respect each other as a subject. So this, in that sense, we haven't done that. This is our concoction, our desk work. So how to defend from that critique? I would say, okay, Weber has many, many excellent insights, and well, as a social scientist, maybe you should stick to some sort of value neutrality, like saying this is happening on some level, and then your findings go into public sphere. This is Habermasian reference, so everyone can discuss that, and our findings can become a part of wider public deliberation on policy goals, and so they go to some sort of public scrutiny in the end, if anyone is interested beyond a methodological conference in that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we overdid it as a matter of time goes, and we kind of left no time at all, but I feel that you might be having questions. So what I am suggesting, the coffee break that is ahead of us after the second primer, we're going to make sure that we are in a visible spot where the coffee break takes place, and then we are able to address the questions because there are other primer waiters. And especially in a case this raised some questions to you. And in doing so, it was first time that we were giving the lecture, so we wasn't sure how much we're going to actually enthusiastically take, especially me, the role of talking. So, yes. So for sure, coffee break, we're going to be grouped so we can actually have a conversation at the coffee break. And thank you very much for your attention. Yes.